Another perfectly normal, perfectly boring day in the most advanced medical facility this side of the Andromeda. Dr. Nexus muttered, his crystalline appendages clicking against the sterilized surfaces of the medical bay. The Starlight Haven Medical Station hung in geosynchronous orbit above planet Medica 7, its pristine white halls gleaming under the artificial lights that mimic the planet's natural day cycle. As Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Nexus had seen his fair share of unusual cases, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to come through those doors. Chief Pip-Squeak, the gaseous junior medical officer, came bouncing quite literally down the corridor, his containment suit flashing warning colors. Emergency incoming. It's the little alien's voice crackled through the translator. ... It's a human. Dr. Nexus felt his crystalline structure vibrate with concern. A human? From the Deathworld. What's the situation? Antimatter containment breach at the research facility. The human was inside the chamber when it happened. What Dr. Nexus's usually composed voice shot up several octaves. But that's impossible. Nobody survives an antimatter breach. Quick, prepare the morgue protocols. The emergency bay doors hissed open. And in walked Sarah Chen, her uniform slightly singed, a few scratches on her face, looking mildly inconvenienced at best. Hi there. Sorry to bother you all, but HR insists I get checked out. Something about proper protocols and whatnot. The medical bay fell silent. Pip-Squeak's gaseous form condensed slightly in shock, making him shrink to half his usual size. But Dr. Nexus's translator struggled to keep up with his stuttering. The antimatter. You should be. How are you? Sarah shrugged, and pulled out a partially melted datapad from her pocket. Oh, this? Yeah, a bit of a mess back there. The containment field had a hiccup, and she gestured vaguely at her singed uniform. Good thing I was wearing my safety goggles. Nurse Flutter, who had just entered the room, promptly fainted, all 6 wings going limp at once. Safety. Goggles. Dr. Nexus felt his professional composure cracking. Against an antimatter breach. Well, yeah, Sarah grinned, showing those terrifying human teeth. Better safe than sorry, right? Though I might need a band-aid or something. Got a bit of a paper cut during the evacuation. She held up her finger, showing a tiny, microscopically tiny cut. Dr. Nexus's medical sensors were going haywire. According to every reading, this human had been exposed to enough energy to vaporize a small moon. And here she was, asking for a band-aid. Pip-Squeak. Dr. Nexus barked, causing the junior officer to bounce nervously. Get me the Class X emergency protocols. Nurse Flutter. He glanced down at the still unconscious insectoid. ... Someone wake up Nurse Flutter. And someone get me Dr. Glowscale. We need a Xenobiologist in here now. Sarah had already made herself comfortable on one of the examination beds, swinging her legs casually. Hey, while we're waiting, anyone got a coffee machine around here? That explosion really took it out of me. Pip-Squeak, who had never encountered coffee before, but had read about its effects on human physiology, let out a high-pitched squeak of terror and bounced straight into the ceiling. Mom. Dr. Nexus tried to maintain his professional demeanor. You've just survived something that should have converted every atom in your body into pure energy. Perhaps we should focus on. Oh, that reminds me, Sarah interrupted, pulling out her phone. Gotta update my status, slight delays at work, antimatter accident. Might be late for dinner, my husband worries, you know. The medical bay's AI chose that moment to helpfully display the standard survival statistics for antimatter exposure. The holographic projection showed a perfect 0% survival rate across all known species, with a new asterisk now needed for humans. Dr. Nexus watched in fascinated horror as Sarah began taking selfies with the still unconscious Nurse Flutter. The human's vital signs were displaying on his medical interface, showing readings that would indicate peak physical condition in any other species. The only elevated metric was something labeled adrenaline, which, according to the database, actually made humans stronger. Right then, Sarah chirped, pocketing her phone. Should we get started with the checkup? I've got a dinner reservation at 8, and this whole antimatter thing has really thrown off my schedule. Dr. Nexus felt a headache coming on impressive. Considering his crystalline biology wasn't supposed to be capable of headaches, he made a mental note to update the medical database. Apparently, humans were contagious in ways they hadn't even imagined. Of course, he managed to say, "Let's begin with a basic scan. Please remain still while we..." Sarah sneezed. The force of the sudden human expulsion sent Pip-Squeak spinning across the room like a deflating balloon, caused every instrument in a 3-meter radius to recalibrate, and somehow woke up Nurse Flutter, who immediately fainted again. "Oh, excuse me," Sarah wiped her nose with her sleeve. "Must be all that antimatter dust. Really tickles the sinuses, you know." Dr. Nexus stared at his patient, then at his trembling medical instruments, then back at his patient. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice was screaming about the impossibility of antimatter dust and sinuses being used in the same sentence by a living being. Perhaps he said carefully, "We should start with your medical history." Sarah brightened. "Oh, sure. Well, there was that time last year when I accidentally fell into the quantum reactor." Pip-Squeak, who had just regained his normal shape, promptly condensed into a tiny dot and rolled under a cabinet. Dr. Nexus realized this was going to be a very, very long day, and somewhere in the vast database of the Starlight Haven Medical Station, a new entry was being created: humans warning standard medical physics may not apply. The day had stopped being perfectly normal about 3 standard hours ago. Now, as Dr. Nexus watched his human patient casually scroll through her social media, while surrounded by increasingly panicked medical staff, he wondered if normal would ever mean the same thing again. Dr. Glowscale burst into the medical bay, his scales flashing a brilliant array of colors that roughly translated to what in the 7 nebulas is going on here. His dramatic entrance was somewhat undermined by the fact that Sarah was now doing one-handed push-ups on the floor while dictating notes about the antimatter breach into her phone. 47. 48. "Oh, hi there. You must be the Xenobiologist," Sarah called out cheerfully. "Just keeping the blood flowing while we wait. Gotta stay active, you know." Dr. Glowscale's scales cycled through several shades of confused purple before settling on a bewildered blue. "Dr. Nexus," he said carefully, "your message said something about an antimatter breach survivor." The two doctors watched in stunned silence as their patient completed her workout, stood up, and casually brushed off her still-singed uniform. Right then, Dr. Glowscale pulled himself together, his scales settling into a professional shade of green. "Let's review what we know about human physiology. Computer, access all medical records regarding human resilience." The computer chirped, helpfully accessing records. "Warning, many entries marked with this has to be a mistake and check equipment calibration. Would you like to proceed?" Yes, Dr. Glowscale waved a bioluminescent appendage impatiently. "Display the most relevant cases." A holographic display materialized, showing a list that made both doctors' universal translators glitch in disbelief. Case 1, human engineer survives full exposure to plasma core. By walking it off. Case 2, human diplomat regenerates limb after teleporter accident. Claims it tickled. Case 3, human chef continues cooking after being technically dead for 3 minutes. Complains only about overcooked pasta. Sarah peered at the list with interest. "Oh hey, I know that chef. Dave from accounting. He makes the best lasagna in the sector." Dr. Nexus felt his crystalline structure vibrate with stress. "Ms. Chen, perhaps you could help us understand. How exactly do humans work?" "Oh, that's easy." Sarah pulled out her slightly melted datapad again. "See, we evolved on this planet with really nasty stuff trying to kill us all the time. So we just kind of got used to it. Like, take this antimatter thing today. Sure, it was hot, but have you ever tried making s'mores over a campfire? Way worse for singed eyebrows." Pip-Squeak, who had cautiously emerged from under the cabinet, immediately condensed again at the mention of deliberately exposing oneself to open flame for. "Snacks?" "Fascinating," Dr. Glowscale muttered, his scales now pulsing with scientific curiosity. "And these cellular regeneration rates. They're off the charts. Computer, begin detailed scan of subject's biological processes." Already on it, Sarah helpfully stood still for the scan. Though fair warning, last time someone tried this, their equipment kind of exploded. Something about our mitochondria being too enthusiastic. Both doctors exchanged alarmed looks. Too enthusiastic. "Yeah, you know how it is. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell and all that." Sarah grinned. "Ours just happen to be more like power plants, with occasional fireworks." The scanning equipment started to smoke ominously. "Oh dear, there it goes," Sarah commented as Dr. Nexus rushed to shut down the scanner. "Don't worry though, I brought spare parts. Never leave home without them after that incident with the quantum spectrometer last month." By now, word had spread through the medical station about the indestructible human patient. Various staff members kept finding excuses to pass by the medical bay, their different species versions of rubbernecking, creating an interesting variety of anatomical contortions in the observation window. Ms. Chen, Dr. Glowscale began, his scales now showing a pattern that suggested deep scientific fascination mixed with existential dread. Would you say your resilience is typical for humans? Oh, I'm actually pretty fragile compared to my cousin Tony. Sarah replied casually. Last week he headbutted a shuttle into alignment when the docking clamps failed. Got a small bruise, but nothing serious. The sound of multiple alien medical professionals fainting echoed from the observation area. A shuttle. Dr. Nexus's translator nearly shorted out. He headbutted a shuttle. Well, yeah, it was either that or let it drift off into space. And you know how expensive those things are. Sarah paused thoughtfully. Though his wife did make him put an ice pack on it afterward. She's very safety conscious. Dr. Glowscale's scales had begun cycling through colors so rapidly he looked like a malfunctioning disco ball. This changes everything we know about xenobiology. The implications for medical science, the potential applications, the complete rewriting of every safety protocol in existence. That's great, Sarah beamed. Does this mean I can skip the quarterly safety refresher courses? They're kind of redundant when you can survive a star going nova by holding your breath. Pip-Squeak, who had just re-expanded to his normal size, promptly evaporated in shock and had to be collected in a specimen jar until he could pull himself together, literally. You survived. A nova? Dr. Nexus asked weakly. Well, it was a really small nova, Sarah said modestly. More of a cosmic hiccup, really. Though it did ruin another perfectly good uniform. Our clothing budget this year is through the roof. The medical bay's AI chose this moment to helpfully display the temperature of a nova, causing several more observers to faint and nurse Flutter, who had finally regained consciousness, to immediately pass out again. Right, Dr. Glowscale announced, his scales finally settling on a determined gold color. We need to document everything. Ms. Chen, would you mind participating in a few controlled experiments? Sure, as long as we wrap up by 8. It's pizza night, and my husband makes this amazing deep dish with quantum-stabilized cheese that just hits the spot after a brush with antimatter annihilation. Dr. Nexus watched as his colleague began setting up various pieces of equipment. All while muttering about rewriting every medical textbook in the galaxy. He made a mental note to update the station's emergency protocols, specifically the section about human patients. Current protocol: treat with extreme caution. New protocol: stand back in amazement, recalibrate all equipment, and hope they don't sneeze. As Sarah began cheerfully describing her family's history of surviving impossible situations, great-grandma once used a black hole as a shortcut to work. Both doctors realized that the galaxy's understanding of what was possible had just been dramatically expanded or possibly shattered beyond repair. The Galactic Medical Conference was in absolute chaos. Dr. Nexus stood at the podium, his crystalline structure gleaming under the spotlight, while behind him, a holoscreen displayed footage that had half the audience questioning their sanity and the other half frantically taking notes. As you can see, he gestured to the recording of Sarah casually juggling plasma cores. Human resilience far exceeds our previous understanding of biological limitations. Impossible, shouted a tentacled physician from the third row. Those plasma cores are at least 15,000 degrees. Oh, that's nothing. Sarah's cheerful voice rang out as she walked onto the stage, causing several audience members to dive for cover. Has anyone here tried my mom's extra spicy curry? Now that's hot. Dr. Glowscale, his scales now permanently stuck in a state of scientific bewilderment, quickly pulled up another set of data. Our research indicates that human cellular structure actually becomes more stable under conditions that would vaporize most species. We've started calling it the whatever, I'm fine effect. The conference hall erupted into chaos as medical professionals from across the galaxy tried to process this information. A group of gaseous beings in the back row had become so agitated they'd started forming complex molecular structures out of pure stress. But what about the laws of physics? Someone wailed from the audience. Sarah shrugged, a gesture that had become infamous across 3 sectors. Oh, those are more like guidelines for us. Watch this, she proceeded to demonstrate by taking a bite out of what appeared to be a steel bar. Bit bland, she commented, needs hot sauce. Dr. Nexus quickly stepped in before any more medical professionals could faint. We've established a new department dedicated to studying human medical phenomena. Already, 17 different species have petitioned for research partnerships, though 3 of them are still recovering from watching the initial demonstration videos. On the giant screen behind them, footage played of Sarah's famous just-walk-it-off approach to various catastrophic events. The highlight reel included her using a quantum singularity as a back-scratcher, treating a dimensional rift as a convenient shortcut to the cafeteria, and that memorable incident with the time paradox that she solved by, in her words, giving it a stern talking to. The implications for emergency medicine are staggering, Dr. Glowscale continued, his scales pulsing with excitement. We've already begun implementing human-inspired treatment protocols. For instance, the rub some dirt on it technique has shown promising results in. He was interrupted by a massive explosion from the lab next door. The entire conference hall shook and warning sirens blared. "Oh, that'll be my husband," Sarah beamed. "He's demonstrating the human digestive system's ability to process antimatter cookies. We're still working on the recipe. The last batch only blew up a small moon." The audience watched in horror and fascination as a slightly singed human male walked through the smoldering wall, dusting off his lab coat. "Hey, honey, the cookies are done, but I think I accidentally created a new form of matter. Want to try some?" Dr. Nexus's translator gave up entirely and started playing calming ocean sounds instead. The Galactic Medical Board has officially classified humans as Dr. Glowscale consulted his notes, and I quote, "a species that treats the impossible as an amusing suggestion. We've had to create entirely new categories of medical certification just to handle their case files." Sarah's husband, meanwhile, had started passing out the cookies, which appeared to be glowing in colors that shouldn't exist. "Careful with these," he warned cheerfully. "They're still a bit unstable. Might cause temporary transcendence to a higher plane of existence." A brave Arcturian in the front row took a bite and promptly became omniscient for 3 seconds. "The universe is a lie," they shouted, before returning to normal. "Also, these need more chocolate chips." Noted Sarah's husband pulled out a notebook that appeared to be made of condensed Starlight. "Anyone else want to try?" "No major side effects, apart from possibly gaining the ability to speak to mathematics." Dr. Nexus watched as the galaxy's most prestigious medical conference devolved into what humans might call a taste-testing party, complete with spontaneous reality warping and the occasional breach in the space-time continuum. In conclusion, "Amer," he said to the now thoroughly shell-shocked audience, "we've established a new wing at Starlight Haven dedicated to human medical studies. Though we've already gone through 17 sets of equipment, 3 reality anchors, and somehow created a new fundamental force of nature during the initial testing phase." "Oh, you mean Kevin?" Sarah interjected. "Yeah, he's a sweet guy once you get to know him." "The new fundamental force, I mean. He comes over for game night on Thursdays." The conference ended with the establishment of the Human Resilience Studies Department across all major medical facilities, though several had to be reinforced with exotic matter just to handle the research materials. Insurance companies across the galaxy simultaneously updated their policies to include a human clause, which basically amounted to throwing out the rulebook and hoping for the best. As Dr. Nexus filed his final report on the indestructible patient case, he couldn't help but smile, a feat previously thought impossible for his crystalline species. The entry read, "Conclusion: humans don't just defy medical science, they give it a friendly wave as they pass by, breaking several laws of physics in the process. Standard treatment protocol updated to include the phrase, 'just let them do their thing' note. Stock break room with coffee. It's apparently more effective than our most powerful regeneration technology, though no one knows why." Sarah Chen's medical file, meanwhile, had become required reading at medical academies across the galaxy, usually preceded by a strong drink and a signed waiver acknowledging that reality was more flexible than previously thought. And somewhere in the vastness of space, on a quite ordinary Tuesday, another human was probably doing something impossible, pausing only to say, "Oops, my bad," as they accidentally rewrote the fundamental laws of the universe.